Today I'm going to talk very briefly about the migration, how the migration is changing over time. But before this, I would like to talk very briefly about the relationship between migration and the globalization. So you already seen in this class that the globalization brought great increase or even free flow of money, products, resources. For example, some resources being from Latin America being transported to China, where they're transformed into products, or services like Netflix that have been produced in one country are consumed all over the world. Ironically, this didn't apply to migration. Today, we have more walls and borders than ever before. These borders are getting fortified. These borders are getting much more difficult to cross. Also, we have increase in very restrictive visa policies that do not allow people to work, for example, or they restrict the amount of time that they may stay in the country, and so on and so forth. Also, we have persecution and criminalization of migrants. When if migrants trying to cross illegally at the border or their papers are not done correctly, they're going to be treated as criminals. They may receive criminal penalty. When they try to cross the border once again, they're going to be deported. And also, well, they are not only treated as criminals, they are going to be deported to the countries of origin or to countries they came from. So this is a very interesting situation. And of course, like since we talk about the borders, very importantly, we need to talk about the border between Mexico and the United States. This is like a very famous border built by Donald Trump. And we have thousands of migrants that are dying each year trying to cross the border between the two countries. But even more tragic is the situation that we have in case of Europe and in case of Mediterranean. We have thousands of migrants that are trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea each year. And for the last decade, we have about 27, almost 28,000 people who went missing trying to cross to Europe. But let's go very briefly about some basic information about migration. I have here the World Migration Report by the United Nations. Only about 4%, 3.6% of the global population migrate. This situation had changed over time. You may see over here it was slowly increasing from 2.8% that was 25 years ago to 3.6% that it is today. So not big increase, but in terms of people, this is about 100 million people more. So this is like it's a great increase in terms of migration. Also, the term of remittances, the countries that benefit most of remittances are going to be India. This situation didn't change. China, so Chinese, they send a lot of money. Chinese living abroad, they send a lot of money to their families. And of course, Mexico is one of the countries that receive a lot of remittances. The sending countries are going to be United States. Most of remittances are sent from America, followed by United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and well, some European countries like Switzerland and Germany. Well, COVID negatively affected the migration, but if you would look at the general situation, we will see that in all the regions of the world, in the last 30 years, there was a great increase in migration, almost double. This is, for example, Europe, from 50 million to 86. Asia, you may see similar tendencies. And finally, which countries have the most migrants, poor or rich? The answer is that the rich countries, they have bigger migrant populations. This is the United States, 15% are migrants. Let's have a look at Europe, Germany, almost 20%. And now France, 13%. Russia, about 8%. For example, Saudi Arabia, almost 40% of the population are migrants, and in countries of the south, in the developing countries, look, the percentages are way lower. This is India, less than 1%, Brazil, less than 1%, I know, Venezuela, less than 5%, and so on. So what are the basic facts about the migration? So migration, international migration is only about, well, roughly 3 to 4%. who migrate more, men or women, it's the same percentage, it's about 50-50. Previously, men used to migrate a little bit more. There were 53% men and 47 women, but today it's like half and half. There is a great topic of the refugees. The refugees, according to the Geneva Convention, are the people that have been persecuted and they have a right to look for asylum in other countries. This was done, obviously, this definition was done thinking about the Cold War and the persecution in the communist countries so that the people are going to be able to escape to the countries of the north. So, of course, this doesn't apply today. The situation had changed. So maybe there will be also changes in future in terms of the definition of the refugees. What's the most important flow of migration is going to be from rural areas to urban areas, um, both inside of the countries and on the international scale. And well, having like this historical perspective, during the Cold War, most of migration was happening from east to west, from communist countries to the capitalist countries. After the situation, after the Cold War, the situation had changed. We have the migration from south, from poor countries, to the north, to the developed countries. But today the situation is completely different. Migration is a very complex phenomenon today. We no longer talk about like sending and receiving countries. Now people migrate, can go anywhere they want. 21st century, it's about mobility, it's about looking for new opportunities and for different places. For example, we have retired people from Europe who go to live to southern countries because they are attracted by better climate and lower prices. Also, we have people who are being able to work from remotely from any place in the world, so they are going to choose different places instead of just staying in the developed countries. So migration is becoming a very complex phenomenon. Also, we talk about the pendulum migration. People who went to work to, I don't know, to developed countries when they were young and they're returning to their countries of origin later in life. But let's have a look at the map. This was the classical map that they used to teach about the migration. You may see that from this map, most of people, they go to North America. Most of migration goes to North America from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And another pole was Europe. They will go into Europe. So this is the way it used to be. But once again, the migration is becoming more complex and it's no longer just like this. Today, most of migration happens inside of the region itself. So most of people in Asia, they are going to migrate from one place in Asia to another place in Asia. Most of migration, for example, in Europe, since it's an open area, we don't have borders, you may freely migrate from one European country to another. So if, I don't know, you are working in Poland and then you may work in, I don't know, France, and then you may go work in Germany, so on. You may move from freely from one country to another inside of the region itself. Um, there is another very important topic, it's the migration and the economy. The tradition is to see the migration as refugees, as poor people who look for asylum in other countries. And this is not true. First of all, we have a lot of tourism today. So rich people also migrate and they migrate a lot. We have a great migration of millionaires from one country to another. And finally, the migration is the key to development. The migration benefits both the sending and the receiving countries. It's quite obvious that the sending country, the people working in more developed countries, they're going to send remittances to maintain their family. This is going to stimulate the economic growth. Also, they're going to transfer the knowledge. For example, when we have a diaspora of Chinese was trying to strengthen the ties between the Chinese all over the world so that they, for example, they're going to transfer the knowledge, they're going to transfer technology, they're going to transfer their experience and return to China and start the businesses or like they were making in other countries. And finally, very importantly, for the developed world that are experiencing a demographic transition where we have more people of older ages and smaller young population. So in most countries of the developed world, we are experiencing labor shortages. So we need to bring the migrants, we need to bring the workers from countries of the South that are going to occupy those positions. Like, for example, there is a famous case of nurses from Philippines that came to United States to do this job and to occupy this shortage of nurses that they were experiencing. And another very important topic is the relationship between migration and the citizenship. So, how is migration affecting the global citizenship? Traditionally, in many countries still today, in order to become the citizen or to occupy, like for example, to become the president of the country, you have to be born inside of the country. You may not be the president of the United States if you've been born, I don't know, let's say in some country of Europe. So there is a relationship between the citizenship and the nationality. Only those people who are of I don't know, who are born in United States, they may be the citizens of United States, like as a tradition. You may get, for example, you may change your citizenship. This is becoming more and more often, or the double citizenship when I know the people they have citizenship in several countries. It's becoming more common today, but still there is like this perception that in order to be a citizen, you have to be of the same nationality. So obviously this is not true, and maybe it will change in the future. Also, migration have brought multiculturalism. The migrants that came to United States, they brought their cultures. So today, that's why we talk so much about the multiculturality, and this has been also promoted by migration. We expect that this is going to be the tendency in the future. And looking at some historical perspective, for example, I have here the image of the French Revolution for you. During the French Revolution, this was like one of the greatest experiments in political change that happened. But during the French Revolution, the foreigners who participated in the French Revolution, they were allowed to be citizens. So this relationship between being a citizen and taking the political decisions of the country and being born in this country, it's really not a requirement in many cases. Or, for example, the cases of the world wars that were fought during the 20th century, when we are fighting for the nationality, we are fighting for the nationalism, and in reality, for example, this is not like it's a way to justify the conflict, but this is not about the true citizenship and the true love of one's country. So the question is, what is going to happen in the future to migration? How the migration is going to develop? Well, we don't know for sure. There are a lot of efforts from part of, for example, from the part of the United Nations to promote migration, to promote the rights of migrants, so that the migrants are going to be seen as human beings. Because ironically, when the migrant is crossing the border, for example, the border patrol, and I don't know if they are being affected and there's some dangerous situation, the border patrol cares more about persuading migration than saving the migrants from the danger and saving the migrants. So this is of course unacceptable, and there were images of migrants, I don't know, dying, of dead children on the shores of the Mediterranean, and the whole, like this causes attention that the people and their human rights, their basic rights, are not being protected. So let's see what is going to happen to the migration in the future. But well, the tendency is that the migration is increasing over time and it's going to continue growing.